Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are still at the r/NoSleep subreddit and we're looking at a post currently submitted by Gamalfrank. It says, "My boss gave me one rule as a 911 dispatcher. If a call comes from the old house on the county line, you let it ring." Last night, I answered. Alright, let's get down to it. I've been a 911 dispatcher for 12 years. The last 7 was on the graveyard shift. You think you've heard it all after that long. The drunks, the domestics, the panicked fumbling of words after a car crash. It all becomes a kind of white noise, a rhythm of human misery. Learn to navigate without letting it touch you. You have to. It's the only way to stay sane. My district is a sprawling, sleepy county that dies after 10 p.m. It's mostly soccer moms and retirees. The worst we usually get on a weeknight is a noise complaint or a teenager who has had too much to drink at a bonfire. The job, for me, had become a circle of caffeine, fluorescent lights, and the low constant hum of computer servers. I was burnt out, deeply existential tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. The calls were just blips on a screen, voices to be processed, categorized, and dispatched. I was a human switchboard for other people's worst days. The first call came on Tuesday, about 3 months ago. It was 2:47 a.m., the deadest hour of the deadest midnight. The line lit up on my console, but not in the usual way. It wasn't a cell call, it was a GPS ping or a landline with a registered address. It was just a raw signal designated as unregistered VoIP, not unheard of, but rare. I clicked it open. 911, what's your emergency? Static, a thick, wet sound, like listening to a radio underwater. It crackled and popped, and underneath it, I could barely make out a sound, a whisper. "Hello? Can you hear me?" It was a child's voice. A boy, I thought, maybe 7 or 8. He sounded like he was trying to talk without moving his lips. "This is 911, I repeated, my voice a little louder, a little clearer. "I can barely hear you. What's your emergency?" The static swelled, almost swallowing my whole voice. "He's back! The man in the mask is back!" A chill cold, sharp, went down my spine. It was a professional chill, the one that tells you this is real. This isn't a prank. "Okay, son, where are you? I need an address." Hurting mommy." The whisper came again, breaking with a sob. The static sounded like a swarm of angry insects now. "Daddy's asleep on the floor. He won't wake up." "Son, I need you to tell me where you are. I can't send help if you don't know where you are." My fingers were lying across the keyboard, waiting for a trace, but the system was picking back errors. No location data, no subscriber info, nothing. "The old house," he whispered, his voice fading. "At the end of the road. Please." Then the line went dead. Not a click, not a hang up. It just ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a line of static and terror. The next, it was just a dead channel. Even without an address, the old house at the end of the road was enough. Out on the western edge of the county, there was a long, unpaved road that just sort of peters out into the woods. At the end of it, there's one house, a big, derelict Victorian thing that's been empty for as long as anyone can remember. It was a local legend, the kind of place kids dare each other to spend a night in. I dispatched a patrol car. My senior officer, a guy who has been on the force since I was born, came back over the radio about 15 minutes later. His voice was flat, laced with the kind of annoyance reserved for rookies and first-timers. Dispatch car 12 is here. The property is secure. No signs of forced entry. Place is boarded up tighter than a drum. There's nobody here. Hasn't been for 50 years by the looks of it. 10-4, car 12, I said, my own voice betraying none of my confusion. Are you sure? The caller was a child. He said his family was being attacked. There was a sign over the radio. There was a sign over the radio. Listen, the dust on the porch is an inch thick. The boards on the windows are gray and rotted. If someone is there, they are a ghost. We are clearing the call. Tell whoever's playing games to knock it off. I logged it as an unfounded. I tried to put it out of my mind. A prank, a sophisticated one, maybe using some kind of voice changer as a VoIP spoofer. Kids these days. I was too tired to care. A week later, at 2:47 a.m., the same line was lit up. The same static, the same terrified, whispering voice. He's in the house. I can hear him walking. This time I felt a knot of ice in my stomach. Son, this is the same color from last week. A choked sob. He has the mask on, the one with the scary smile. Mom's screaming. Faintly through the storm of static, I could hear it. A woman's scream, high and thin and distorted, like a sound being played backwards. I'm sending help, I said, my voice tight. Stay on the line with me. Can you hide? In the closet, he whispered. He's coming up the stairs. I can hear his feet. The line went dead. I dispatched 2 cars this time. I told them it was a repeat call, possibly a hostage situation. I didn't want them to be complacent. They took it seriously. They set up a perimeter. They used a bullhorn. They broke down the front door. The result was the same. An empty house. Thick, undisturbed layers of dust in every surface, rotted floorboards, peeling wallpaper, and the smell of decay and forgotten things. No footprints, no child, no man in a mask, no sign of a human being had set foot in this house in decades. My supervisor pulled me aside the next morning. He's a large, patient man who has the weary look of someone who has seen it all twice. He told me to drop it. It's a glitch, he said, not meeting my eye. Some kind of cross chatter from another jurisdiction or a recurring electronic echo. Don't waste county resources on it. If that call comes in again, log it and move on. But I couldn't. The boy's voice, it was too real. The terror in it was primal. You can't fake that. Not even the best actor in the world can fake that sound of a child who thinks his mother is being murdered in the next room. The calls kept coming every Tuesday, like clockwork, on 2:47 a.m. Each call was a slightly different piece of the same horrible puzzle. He's hurting daddy now. There's 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 so much red. Mom stopped screaming. He's looking for me. I can hear him open the doors. Every time I sent a car, every time the result was the same. The cops got angrier. I was the boy who cried wolf. My supervisor gave me a formal warning. My colleagues started looking at me funny, whispering when I walked by. They thought I was cracking up. Maybe I was. I started losing sleep. On my nights off, I'd find myself staring at the clock, my heart pounding at 2:47 a.m. As 2:47 a.m. approached, the silence was somehow worse than the calls. I became obsessed. During the day, instead of sleeping, I went to the county records office. I needed to know who owned that house. The paperwork was a mess. It had been sold and resold, owned by banks and holding companies, but I kept digging backwards through the dusty ledgers and brittle property deeds. Finally, I found it. The last family who actually lived there. A deed from 1968. It's a nice, happy family. A mom, a dad, and two kids. A boy and a girl. That wasn't enough. I started spending my days in the library basement, scrolling through decades of local newspapers on a squishy ancient microfiber reader. The stale, papery smell of the archives filled my lungs. I was looking for anything related to the house, to the family, for weeks. I've found nothing, just property tax notice and school honor rolls. And then I found it. An article from a cold late autumn day of 1975. The headline was stark. Local family slain in apparent home invasion. My blood ran cold. I zoomed in, my hands trembling as I adjusted the focus knob. The picture was grainy, black and white. It was the house. The same steep gables, the wide porch. Police police cars were parked haphazardly on the overgrown lawn. I read the article. My heart hammered against my ribs. A husband, a wife, and their 10-year-old daughter found dead in their home. The cause of the death was extensive. The article was vague, using phrases like brutal force trauma. The police report mentioned a possible intruder, a figure a neighbor had seen fleeing into the woods, described only as a tall man wearing some kind of pale, expressionless mask. But the last paragraph was what made me stop breathing. The family's 8-year-old son, it's read, remains missing. The police found evidence he was hiding in an upstairs closet during the attack, but the boy had not been found. A statewide search is underway. Authorities have not ruled out the possibility that he was abducted by the assailants. The crime was never solved. The masked man was never found. The little boy was never seen again. I sat back in my chair. The library basement suddenly feels like a tomb. The static, the whispers, the closet, man in the mask. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't a glitch. I was listening to a ghost. The next day at work, I felt broken. I walked into the dispatch center like a zombie. The hum of all the servers sounded like funeral dirge. I couldn't keep it in anymore. I had to tell someone. I grabbed my supervisor and one of the oldest dispatchers, a woman who had been there for 30 years, and I dragged them into the break room. I laid it out. I laid it all out. The calls, the timing, the empty house, the microfiche article. I showed them the copy I had printed out, the grainy picture of the house, the headline. I expected them to think I was insane. I expected them to tell me to take a leave of absence. They didn't. They just looked at each other. It was a look I'd never seen before, of a grim, tired resignation. My supervisor tried, and my supervisor sighed, a heavy rattle sound, and rubbed his temple. The other dispatcher, she just stared at the article. Her face paled. So it has started again, she said, her voice barely a whisper. What do you mean? I asked again. I asked, my voice shaking. What is going on? My supervisor sat down heavily. Kid, he said, and he looked like 100 years old. We need to tell you about the man you replaced. He told me the story. The dispatcher who had my seat before me, he had been a good man, sharp, dedicated. About a year before I was hired, he started getting strange. He was obsessed with a specific address, the old house at the end of the road. He kept sending cars out there, insisting that there was a child in trouble. The patrols always came back empty. He started pulling old files, spending his days off at the library. He became withdrawn, paranoid. He claimed he was getting calls no one else could hear. We checked the log. My supervisor said, his voice low and serious, the system never registered calls. He said they were taken. He pulled the audio recorders of his console. There was nothing on them but dead air. We thought he was having a breakdown. Stress of the job. My blood turned into ice water. The system, it doesn't log the calls for me either. They just show up on the screen and then disappear. They don't go into the call history. The older dispatcher nodded slowly. We know. It's the same. He told us what the calls were about. A little boy, a man in a mask. I felt like I was going to be sick. What happened to him? I whispered. I thought I already knew the answer. One night, the supervisor continued, his eyes fixed on the linoleum floor. He took a call. We saw him on the console talking, his face ashened. He was typing a report. Then he just stopped. He stood up, grabbed his jacket and his keys, and walked out without a word. The call was still active on the screen, but none of us could hear anything on it. We just saw the open line. Where did he go? He drove to the house. His car was found parked on the road next morning. The engine was cold. The doors were locked, but he was gone. The silence in the room was absolute. We searched, the old dispatcher said, her voice cracking. The police did a grid search of the entire woods, dogs, helicopter, the whole 9 yards. We went through that house from the attic to the cellar. We found nothing. No sign of a struggle, no footprints, no him. He just vanished, wiped off the face of the earth. I stared at them, my mind struggling to process what they are telling me. Why? Why didn't you warn me? I stammered. How could we? My supervisor shut it. shot back, his voice rising with frustration that had been festering for years. Hey, new guy, welcome aboard. By the way, this console might be haunted, and the last guy who sat here had disappeared. Don't worry about it. You have thought we were crazy. We thought he was crazy until you came here today with the same damn story. He leaned forward, his eyes locked into mine. This is what you're going to do. The next time that line rings, you do not answer. If you answer by mistake, you hang up immediately. You do not talk to him. You do not engage. You terminate the call and you clear the line. That's an order. Do you understand me? For the next few weeks, I was a ghost of myself. I did my job on autopilot. Every sound, every flicker on the screen made me jump. I dreaded Tuesday nights. I drank so much coffee I could feel my heart rattling in my chest. Just to stay sharp, to stay vigilant. I thought about quitting. I thought about just walking out and never coming back. But where would I go? Then last night it happened. It was 2:45 a.m. I was staring at the clock, my knuckles white from gripping the edge of my desk. The minutes ticked by like hours. 2:46. My mouth was dry. My heart was a drum solo in my ears. 2:47. The line lit up. The unregistered VoIP. It felt like a physical blow. I flinched back in my chair. My training knock, my training, my instinct, every fiber of my being screamed at me to answer it. There was a child in trouble. That was the job. But I remembered the pale, haunted face of my supervisor, the story of the man who had vanished. You terminate the call. I let it ring. Once, twice, the flashing light on the console seemed to sear into my retinas. My hand hovered over the button, trembling. I couldn't just ignore it. I had to answer. I had to. I clicked the button. 911 was your... The static was raw, louder than it had ever been. It was like a physical presence in my ear, a wall of noise, and through it, the boy's voice came, not whispering this time, but screaming. It was raw, ragged sound of pure agony and terror. He's got me! He's got me! Please! He's taking me! Please, sir, don't let him take me! Help me! The sound ripped through my professional detachment and tore right into my soul. This was it. This is the climax. The moment the boy was taken, replaying for all eternity, my hand flew into the keyboard to the dispatch car. Purely a reflexive action, born of years of training, but I stopped. My fingers froze over the keys. He's gone. This already happened. It's not real. The boy was sobbing now. His screams turned into choked gasps. Please, please. You promised. You said you sent help. Don't leave me. I felt tears well up in my eyes. I was a 911 dispatcher. My job was to send help. And I was going to sit and listen to a child being abducted or murdered and do nothing. I'm sorry, I whispered, my voice thick. I'm so sorry. I reached for the terminate button on my screen. My finger was a millimeter from the glass. This was it. I was choosing to save myself. I was choosing to let him go. And then the screaming stopped. It wasn't a fade out. It was an abrupt cut, as if a switch had been flipped. The roar of statics dropped. to a low, sinister hum. The line was still open. Silence. My heart was in my throat. What did I do it? Then a new sound came through the headset. It wasn't the boy. It was a man's voice, a whisper, just as terrified as the child had been, but older, hoarser. It distorted by the same underwater static, the same swarm of electric insects. It was a voice trying to push its way through an impossible distance, through time itself. It was a voice I felt deep in my bones. I should have recognized from an old staff photo in the hallway. The whisper was faint but utterly terrifying to hear. He's here. I froze, my fingers hovering over the screen. The voice was ragged, desperate, broken. He sees you through the line. He's looking at you right now. A cold dread, so absolute and profound, it felt like death itself washed over me. I slowly, involuntarily looked up from my console across the darkened dispatch center towards the plate glass window that looked out into the night. There was nothing there but the reflection of my own terrified face in the glass, my skin pale in the glow of the monitors. The whispering in my ear continued, a final chilling plea from a place beyond hope. Please, get me out of here. Alright, that's the end. And until next time, I'll see you guys. Bye.